Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of our Chief Growth Officer video interviews. Today, I have the pleasure of bringing back Chris Stanley of Beach Street Legal to discuss the upcoming November SEC marketing rules amendments, which will be impacting many of you, if not all of you. And I want him to get deeper into the changes that are coming up, as well as some of the misconceptions, and more importantly, how to really embrace them for your marketing. As an outsourced chief marketing officer to many advisors across the nation, we definitely need to be on top of it. And we thought, why not record this for your compliance officers, for advisors within your teams, as well as for your general firm. So with that, Chris, thank you so much for joining us once again. And for anyone who hasn't watched the video, I'm going to hyperlink the previous one to this recording. Chris, if you don't mind, just give us a quick overview of yourself and what your firm provides to investment advisors.
Absolutely. Amy, I appreciate the opportunity to be back and continuing the conversation. Beach Street Legal is a law firm and a compliance consultancy. We focus exclusively on REAs, and we help out with everything from day-to-day compliance matters, regulatory matters, corporate legal matters. And we do a fair amount of work in the M&A space as well. So really targeted in that REA community and financial planner community.
Same with us. So that's why it's always so important for us to know our landscape and the intricacies of what's going on. So with that, if you could just, for those who may not yet be familiar, I hope most people are, give a quick overview of what is coming up in November. What are the main changes that people should be aware of?
Yeah, absolutely. So for the first time in decades, in quite some time, testimonials are now going to be permissible for SEC registered investment advisors to utilize in their marketing materials. This has historically been prohibited across the board for SEC registered advisors. And so that avenue of marketing was just effectively off the table, no ifs, ands, or buts. But that has changed. And so what the SEC effectively did is they overhauled what was formerly referred to as the advertising rule for investment advisors. They eliminated the former cash solicitation rule for advisors, and they combined those rules into what is now referred to as the marketing rule. And so in the marketing rule, you have some tenets from the former cash solicitation rule, you have some tenets from the old advertising rule, and you have some new tenets that the SEC brought into the fold for the first time. So the material takeaways, if you will, or the material sections of the new marketing rule have to do with testimonials, which are statements given by a client of the firm that are generally positive in nature and reflecting of the client's experience with the firm. You have endorsements, which are similar statements, only they're given by a non-client of the firm. And then there's also equally important sections of the marketing rule that address marketing from a third-party rating and review service provider perspective. So how advisors can avail themselves of third-party ratings and reviews that are issued by rating and reviews organizations. And finally, there's a significant part of the new marketing rule that deals with performance advertising. So for those firms that are utilizing investment performance, model performance, hypothetical performance, anything to do with the performance of their portfolios, the SEC effectively eliminated a lot of the prior no action relief and guidance letters and memorialized a lot of those tenets into the marketing rule itself. So again, the three pillars are testimonials and endorsements, third-party ratings and reviews, and now performance advertising as well.
So in one word, would you say that this new change is going to be more or less restrictive for advisors?
Less, and simply because the former prohibition against testimonials has now been eliminated. So what was formerly off the table, for example, insofar as including client testimonials on a firm's website, maybe retweeting positive things that a client may have said on Twitter, resharing, and I'm going to butcher probably the social media terminology here, but resharing nice things that a client or a third party may have said on LinkedIn or Yelp or Google reviews, hyperlinking to those on your website, like all of those are now on the table, whereas historically, that just really didn't have a whole lot of permissibility associated with it.
Yeah, for example, I know some firms were kind of staying away if someone wrote a comment for them on LinkedIn. If someone said, "You're the best advisor," they would not reply back to that comment. Are you saying all of those are now on the table and allowed?
Correct. And as you can imagine, the SEC didn't come out with a rule and just say, "Hey, have at it. It's open season. No rules or requirements or disclosures or anything around that." That's definitely not the case. So there are very intricate things that an advisor will want to be mindful of that are built into the new marketing rule when availing themselves of client testimonials or third-party endorsements. So there are certain disclosures that have to be made. For example, the SEC even prescribes how those disclosures have to be made in terms of the proximity to the actual testimonial or endorsement. There's additional ADV disclosure that's required, additional record keeping requirements. There's certain things that are still tried and true in terms of not being misleading, not omitting material information. Basically your advertisements and your marketing material still has to be truthful and honest and fair and balanced, et cetera. But there certainly is more permissibility there with respect to the way that you can use what clients have said about you in a public forum.
So if I'm a chief compliance officer with these new rules coming out, what should be keeping me up at night that maybe I haven't really thought through with these new rules? Or in another way, what are some main, I guess, misconceptions that people may not be aware of?
Sure. So to answer the first part of that, I think if I were in the CCO's shoes, there'd be a two-pronged approach, just to be very simplistic about it. Number one, is the firm prepared to adhere to the new marketing rules obligations? Because even if the firm does not intend to avail itself of testimonials or endorsements, or maybe it doesn't do performance advertising, it is still very worthwhile to review your compliance policies and procedures manual to update various references to conform to the new marketing rule. Also, you'll need to remove any references to the former cash solicitation rule to the extent that you have any referral or solicitation arrangements with third parties. Those should be updated in your compliance policies and procedures as well. And I mentioned referral and solicitation arrangements as well. Again, for those firms that do have those relationships, it is definitely going to be important to review the agreements you have with third-party COIs, referral sources, solicitors, et cetera, to make sure that they conform to the new marketing rule as well. So I think number one, focus on compliance procedures. Is your firm prepared to meet the mandatory compliance deadline of November 4th? And then the second prong, insofar as preparation or getting some better sleep at night, would be training and education with respect to your advisor staff. And I think this is where it bleeds over into the second part of your question about common misconceptions, because I think some advisors or some members of the public may hear like, "Oh, the SEC allows testimonials. I'm going to go out to all my clients and have them say nice things about me and post them on my website, post them on my LinkedIn profile, post them on any other venue I can find to get the word out there." And I think from the CCO spot, the message is going to be, I understand you want to avail yourself of this new permissibility, and that's great, but we have to go about it in the right way. Here's how you can use testimonials. Here's how you can use endorsements. Here's the records that are required to be kept. Here's the disclosures that have to be made. So I think in terms of avoiding misconceptions, that's where that advisor education component comes into play, to say, yes, we're happy to entertain these new avenues of marketing that are now open to us, but let's do it the right way. Let's make sure we're not creating a problem for us in the next SEC exam.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Actually, Chris, there is so much talk about these cash solicitation rules, but a lot of firms I work with are not, giving cash solicitations. I haven't seen too many firms who are doing that, which makes me want to talk to you about that and see if that could be a great opportunity for their marketing. So are you saying that at this stage going forward, come November, an advisor could potentially build a relationship with a real estate agent, with a CPA, and tell them, hey, if you give me a referral to one of your clients and that client becomes an actual client, I could give you, $1,000. That's one question I was going to say. And also, I'm assuming you can't give cash solicitations to existing clients. I know that may be a dumb question, but is that also, like, can you give a fee break? And, what are the rules there? Because there's so much talk in this rule about cash solicitation. So I wanted to see how one could embrace it.
Yeah, well, it's actually not a dumb question. It's actually a
Oh,
great question because there certainly are situations where clients could conceivably be referral sources. Maybe it's a family member, maybe it's another member of their professional network, an organization they're a part of, whatever the case may be. And so this is part of what the SEC did in eliminating the cash solicitation rule, but taking many of the components of it and folding it into the marketing rule.
oh,
And
wow.
you'll notice they eliminated specifically the word cash compensation to broaden the types of compensation that could be paid to a referral source that would still be swept under the rule. So in other words, to piggyback off your example of a client per se, if a client is the source of a referral for an advisor, the advisor wants to say thank you and maybe gives them a fee discount or a large break in quarterly advisory fees that they would otherwise have paid, or maybe a large gift card to a nice restaurant or something along those lines that was in consideration for the referral. Technically, that is considered compensation. It would be swept under the new marketing rule. And so the firm would want to make sure it's complying with any sort of disclosure requirements in that vein. So yeah, clients are not shut off from being referral sources or from receiving cash compensation per se, or other forms of compensation per se. The big caveat to all of this is that at the state level, and this is even for SEC registered advisors, but for advisors across the board, the states still generally require that those individuals that receive compensation for referring clients to registered investment advisors themselves have to be registered as investment advisor representatives, which again means they would have to take and pass, for example, the Series 65, or have a qualifying professional designation like the CFP or the CFA. And so advisors will want to be very, very mindful not to put the referral sources in hot water in the sense that they're paying them a referral fee, but those referral sources are not actually licensed and appropriately registered to receive those referral fees. So again, this is unfortunately a very convoluted web of state rules and regulations, because most states require referral sources that are compensated to be registered. Some don't. Some have various carve-outs if it's below a de minimis threshold. Some carve out certain professionals from these rules. So states are all over the map in this regard. But the takeaway here is that for both SEC registered advisors and state registered advisors, you still have to contend with state rules and regulations regarding potential licensing and registration of those that get compensation for referrals.
Oh, okay. So yeah,
Yeah,
it wasn't
that
as
was
good of a
that was a
question
lot to
as I
swallow,
thought.
I know, but it's more complicated than it seems. So while the SEC has permissibility there, there's always a but, right? And the
Yeah.
but is in this instance.
But just so I fully understand that, because this is interesting to me, and because the number one source for all advisors to grow is always going to continue being client referrals. So you're saying if an advisor has a client that is a heavy referral source, the client could technically say, you're in our elite group and you will potentially be able to get a fee discount because of how many referrals you've given us? Or you're saying that then they might have to check that with the state?
Both. So in other words, they could certainly be compensated for client referrals, with the huge but, or the huge caveat that you would want to check particular state regulations to this effect to see if that client, because they're getting compensated for client referrals, themselves needs to be an investment advisor representative, maybe needs to take the Series 65. And every firm will have to analyze, and the client will have to analyze, is that going to be worth it? But frankly, clients are held to the same standard as CPAs, estate planning attorneys, real estate agents, insurance agents, name your professional. If they're getting compensated by a registered advisor, for client referrals, they too will have to go through the same analysis of, oh, do I have to be registered at the state level? Do I have to have a U4 on file? Do I have to take an exam in order to receive this compensation?
Yeah, that's where it gets hairy and too many rules within the states.
Right. Yeah. And it depends on where the person giving the referrals is physically located, potentially where are the clients that are being referred located. There's potentially room for the individual not to become licensed and registered if they become an employee or an associated person of the SEC registered investment advisor. But again, it can get a little bit hairy pretty quickly. So that's definitely something to cross the T's on and dot the I's on before you go too far down that rabbit hole.
Definitely, but definitely it sounds like something that they could bring to your attention if they do have sources like that within their client base, and work around it.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, it's been one of the more common questions we've received over the last year or so is the hypothetical example is I have person X that's a good friend, they're a great COI, they've sent me a lot of great referrals. I want to make sure that they're compensated appropriately.
Yeah.
I say, great. Let's run through the analysis. Where are they located? How are they compensated? What types of clients are they sending you? Are they registered? Do they have a professional designation? Et cetera, and kind of work through, okay, how many hoops do we have to jump through to make this work? And is it worth it to you? Is it worth it to the referral source? And then the client can make an informed decision from there.
That's an amazing, but if it does pass all those tests, that could be an amazing opportunity for firms.
Yeah.
And my final question is, what are some other ways that you've seen firms embrace this based on some of the actual examples you've seen, maybe a firm embarking on this new avenue for their practice based on the new rulings? Have you seen some case studies that you could share that other advisors could take on as well?
Yeah, so I think the most common that we see are firms that are capitalizing on pre-existing client reviews that have been left on third-party review sites, namely like Google reviews or maybe Facebook or maybe, pick your social media platform.
Yelp or yeah.
Exactly. And these reviews have been kind of sitting out there, for lack of a better term, for months, maybe years, and the advisor really hasn't had the ability to interact with the reviews or promote them in any sort of meaningful fashion. So I think advisors are really looking out there and say, okay, let's scour the internet and see what we can find that is publicly available that clients have said about us. And is there a way that we can further interact with, we can further promote these nice things that clients have said about us on our website or in our content and our marketing material, just to get the word out. And so at least from what we've seen, firms are not necessarily trying to, start day one from like launching a huge testimonial or endorsement campaign, although we certainly have clients that have done that. But the majority are saying, okay, let's inventory what's out there already, just to make sure we can grab that low-hanging fruit. And then once we have the ability to analyze how well that's working, is there an uptick in leads? Is there an uptick in business? Maybe we start pouring some more gas on it and looking more organically in-house to see how can we further avail ourselves from a testimonial perspective on our own websites and in our own marketing materials.
That's great. Yeah, that's that, as well as figuring out new sources for solicitors for your practice, I think could be really great opportunities for advisory firms.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to your point, and you'll know the data on this a lot better than I ever will, but just anecdotally, I can say that our clients tend to get the most of their clients from referral sources. And so to the extent that advisors can further promote that, can, sort of poke and prod to see how much more they can avail themselves of those sources. And, to be fair, to have these people be compensated accordingly for their efforts and their generosity, then it could be a potential win-win.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Chris. I really appreciate your time. For anyone who would like to pick Chris's brain about what's coming up and to, initiate this within your practice, please do reach out to Chris. I'll hyperlink his bio and his contact information below. And if you'd like to figure out how to embrace this within your marketing strategy, please do make sure you reach out to us as well. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a great day.